let's get a reminder of what the discriminant is. So go ahead and write out the formula, quadratic formula, and draw an arrow pointing at the discriminant. Where is that? So when you're taking your test, you guys, as soon as we go over this, you're going to be like, oh, okay, it's that. But if you're taking your test, you're not going to have that luxury of being reminded what the discriminant means. So if you just forget what it means, you miss it, even though you know very well how to do it. So let's keep in mind what it is. So write up the formula and draw an arrow pointing to the discriminant. And then also circle the axis of symmetry on it as well. And then on the test, I could easily give you an essay question on this and say, write down the quadratic formula and talk about the different parts of it and what they mean. Open-ended question, you should say, okay, quadratic formula is negative b over 2a, right? That part is called the axis of symmetry. It helps you find the vertex if you're not using the vertex form. And then we have this other part that's plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And the part inside the radical, not the radical though, is called the discriminant. Okay. Oops. Discriminant. Okay. This word right here. All right. And what does that discriminant tell you? What does that mean? So we looked at a couple different situations. Okay. So if I just change A or B, you notice that does not change the calculation of b squared minus 4ac. If I change B, you can see there's two x-intercepts. When this number is positive, there's two x-intercepts. As soon as I get to one x-intercept, it goes back to 0. So this number that's inside the radical tells you how many solutions. If I know it's positive, then I know there's two solutions. If I know it's 0, there's one answer, which is going to be also the x-intercept. And if it's negative, as you can see, there's no x-intercepts. It doesn't cross the x-axis at all. It's negative. There are no x-intercepts. And then when it slowly gets to 0, and now it's crossing it again. Alright. So, in short, here's what you want to, if in that same essay questions, you'd be able to say, well, if it's negative, since this number's inside a negative, since this number's inside a square root, you can't take the square root of a negative, so therefore there are no real solutions. And if this number comes out to be 0, as it did on the homework, the last one, well, you'd get like 6 plus 0 divided by 2 and 6 minus 0 divided by 2, which both equal 3. You get 3 and 3. There's only one answer. Right? There's only one answer. And of course, if it comes out to positive, take the square root of positive, that's when we get like, 2 plus 3 and 2 minus 3, you get two different answers. So that's what the discriminant tells us, is how many solutions there are without actually going through and finding out what the solutions are. So when I factored it, I know what to expect. So, and also note the discriminant does not include the square root. It's just the b squared minus 4ac, not the square root. So on this one we can say a equals 4 and b equals negative 2, C equals -1. As long as we plug them in correctly, we're okay. Now, do we really care about the number? Does the number matter here that we actually get? What matters more, the number or the sign? The sign. Yeah, I really don't care if I get -20 or -15 or -100. The fact that it comes out negative is always the same result. There's no answer. So here we'll end up with, let's see here, -2, -4, and -1. So that -2 squared, we get 4. -4 times -4, positive 16, but positive 16 times -1. So this equals negative. And again, I could say it just equals negative something. Who cares? It equals a negative, right? So therefore, there are how many solutions? How many?
0.
0. Because, yeah, if we're actually doing the real formula, we try to take the square root of this thing next. We try to take the square root of -12, which we can't do. You can't take a square root of a negative, so you can't get an answer. Which leads you to something that's going to happen today in your homework. If you're doing the quadratic formula and the discriminant comes out negative, what do you write? No real solution. Yeah, or no solution. In Algebra 2, you'll actually look at some other numbers that are solutions to it, that are not real numbers. Okay. So that's why we're saying we're not going to say no solution at all. We're just going to say there's no real number solution or no real solution. Remember that real doesn't mean like real or fake. It means like a real number, like a fraction or a radical or something. All right, so we can tell by using this right here, knowing the next step is to take the square root of whatever we get, we can tell how many solutions there are. All right, so a little bit of practice for you. And also, I guess the biggest thing here that I've seen over the years that people struggle with is when they get this direction, they don't know what to do. It's not going to tell you do b squared minus 4ac. So make sure you understand that when you see the discriminant, you know what that means. So you're not leaving something that's relatively easy blank on a test because you just forgot. This helps to write out the whole formula. Axis of symmetry, discriminant, that will help you. If the first thing you do when you get your test is just write this down with the arrows and all the little information, it's not cheating as long as you write it down on your own from memory as opposed to copying it. Alright, then we'll get down to these are just going to be more practice. You'll notice the numbers are going to be a little bit bigger. Just give yourself plenty of space. Don't take shortcuts. Don't try to do this really fast and then have to erase it all. I can tell actually when I'm looking at all the homeworks, the ones with all the eraser marks usually have the least amount of work because they know they're wrong and they erase it all, start over. Oh, I got it wrong again. Erase it all, start over. Just show all the work the very first time and you won't be starting over as much. Alright, let's go to 9. Go to the back. I'll do 9 and 11, and that's it. And then you guys will be doing the rest. Just show you a few things that that will pop up on your problems today. Yep. As soon as we get through these, this can work. Yep. And note that if we try to do some of these problems a different way, we might not be able to solve them. So what you're going to see is that tomorrow we're going to take some of these and try to complete the square and factor, and you're going to find out it's impossible. So even though I gave you problems yesterday that all 3 methods work, that's not necessarily the case all the time. I did them intentionally. But later on, yeah, factoring looks really fast, but it doesn't work all the time. So you can't rely on just factoring. So let's complete this. Let's do quadratic formula. What is A? Okay, we gotta do this first. If we don't do this first, we're lost. What is B?
0.
B is 0. Huh? Yeah, so b is 0. There's no number. And c equals negative 10. So note that the 0 is not because this equals 0. That has nothing to do with it. They're always equal to 0. 0 is simply because there's no number that just has a regular variable p. Alright, good. Let's go through it. Negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug it in carefully. 0, 0, 5, 5. And last one is 10. Okay, go ahead a step or two and then see what you get and then stop. Don't wait for me to do it for you, but try it on your own, see what you get. You need to practice. So just keep going and then stop after a few steps and then I'll catch up. One of the things you don't want to do is just look up, look down, copy it. Look up, look down, copy it. You're not going to get much better just by copying somebody else. You got to practice it yourself, which most of you do all the time anyway, which is good. If you find yourself not so good at math, but in class all you do is look up and look down and write down what you saw, that's probably why. You don't learn by just copying somebody else doing it. You have to go along with them. Try to see if you get the same thing. Mess up a lot and then fix it. Then you'll get better at math a lot faster. And look up, look down, and copy it. Alright, so we should be, see here. Negative 0, no such thing, so we could just drop the negative 0 part. Inside we'll get, let's see here, 0 squared. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20, and negative 20 times 10 is 200. All over 10. Okay, is that what you got? Good. Okay, radicals. Can we reduce this radical? Okay, what does it reduce to? So you might remember we had that chart, you know, with all the different numbers that are multiples of perfect squares. So like you knew 98 was 49 times 2, and what we got? 102. Yeah, so the biggest perfect square that goes into 200 is 100. And you don't want to you always want to use the greatest perfect square, the GPS, right? Because it might be tempting to say, oh, 25 goes into 200 8 times. Yeah, that's true. 25 is perfect square, but then root 8 would also reduce, and we don't want to do that. So let's just finish this up. What is this? What does this equal? Yeah, plus or minus 10 root 2 over 10. Now, is it okay to cancel the 10s?
No. Oh, yeah.
And when is it okay? When was it not okay? Remember? Yeah, adding, subtracting, we don't want to cancel them. And that would be like adding, subtracting between. So like if this was 10 plus root 2, then no, we cannot cancel. But since this is 10 times root 2, yes, we can cancel. So we get two answers. Plus or minus the square root of 2. If we were actually graphing, we can approximate it. You can use approximate sign, which is like a wavy equal sign. And that's about 1.4. Okay, positive and negative. Yeah. So it looks something like that. Now, keep in mind from right here, the fact that that's a positive lets me know I do have two answers. Although I have not very many, but I have seen some people that once they get down to here and they see, oh, it's square root of 2, you can't take the square root of 2, no solution. Based on the fact that this is positive, you know there's two solutions. So it's okay if it's not a nice perfect square. Tonight, you really just need to do the exact. You don't need to do approximate and get a decimal, but just showing you that it's still possible to graph, and yeah, it's not this easy number, but it's doable. Okay. So the biggest difference between before last night or last homework and this homework is that you will have radicals in the answer, and you have to be okay with that. Don't get freaked out and say I did something wrong. It must be a mistake. It's fine. Let's see here. Excuse me? Not yet. All right. Should we do one more? Or do you want to work? One more? Okay. Let's go and do 11. We'll do a little bit faster since we explained a lot of the steps the first time through. Now, faster does not mean skipping steps. Don't get me wrong. So I'm still going to write everything out I always do. By the way, since I'm the teacher and when I'm making my keys for like all the quizzes and tests, I can't afford to make any mistakes, get it wrong, because then everybody's test or quiz I grade is now wrong. So what you're seeing here is exactly what I do. It's not the version I have for you guys, just because it's new to you, but I have some faster way that's going to be, 10 times as short, and I'm just not telling you. No, that's exactly what I do, because this avoids all the mistakes that are commonly made. So write this step out just to, be sure. Also this. Okay. Circle them. Or you can just off to the side write A equals B equals C equals. Don't forget the negatives. Stuff like this counts. It makes a difference. If you're going for accuracy and the highest grade possible, trying to get into the hardest university that there is to get into, this is the kind of stuff you do. It's not something that's graded, but it leads to better things, and so you do it. Alright, so we plug in 11, 11, negative 10, negative 10, negative 2. Negative 11 plus or minus 121. Okay, so we have negative 4 and negative 10 is 40, positive. 40 times negative 2 is negative 80. All over negative 20. So we got negative 11 plus or minus root 41 all over negative 20. Okay. And now before we had root 200, and we had to reduce that to 100 times 2. So now we have 41. What does that reduce to? Root 41. What perfect square goes into 41? And what is it? Does 4? Does 9? 16? 25? Nothing. So it doesn't reduce, but you got to check. Just like reducing a fraction, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You got to check. All right. How about this negative? Can I cancel the negatives? This negative with these two negatives on the top? And the answer is yes. I can distribute this negative to both of these. As long as I can distribute it and divide both of them by a negative, it's okay. Even though it's plus or minus, as long as I do it to both, I'm okay. So to the negative 11. Negative 11 divided by negative 20. Okay. Yeah, the two negatives will cancel out. Now, what happens if I do this right here, just the plus or minus? Uh, So what is a positive divided by the negative? What does that equal? Negative. And on the bottom, what is a negative divided by the negative? Positive. So technically it does this. It changes it to 11 minus or plus root 41. So I divided everything by the negative on the bottom. That's why I'm okay and I'm allowed to do that. Now, does this plus minus, the fact that I changed it to minus plus, does that change the answers? No. If I just left that at plus or minus, the answer would be identical. So if you looked in the back of the book, you wouldn't see this, but that's technically why it doesn't change. Okay? So this is our final answer. And this is where it gets kind of scary because there's no way of really looking at it or factoring this. If we try to factor this, we couldn't do it. Find two numbers that multiply to 20 and add to 11. It doesn't factor. If we try to complete the square, we'd have like 11 over 10. We have to take half of that, which is 11 over 20, and then square it. Have 121 over 400. We'd have all these fractions. So we have to be very careful in all our work and not make any silly mistake in order to get these answers, because there's no other way of checking it. Okay, so your goal is to finish the front and back by the beginning of class tomorrow. I'll collect both this one and last night's at the beginning of class tomorrow.